Exactly as the title says, I think Decay is the worst war tactic that we have seen ever since I have been playing Tier 1 War. I've played 6 different war tactics. The first one I played was Armor Burn, and I don't remember a lot of how Armor Burn went, but I remember every tactic after that. So Decay, Ex Magica, Crush 2.0, Clarity, and Secutor. And I think this is the worst one that has ever came out. And it's coming out again, which is probably why this video exists, because if I hadn't played Decay before, I probably wouldn't be talking about how bad a tactic is before the season even starts, because that would be silly to make that accusation when we are actively only 4 days in to actually playing the tactic, and again, season hasn't started yet. So yeah, with that being said, I'm gonna do a simple pro-con list, kind of like how I did with my Battlegrounds hot takes video about a month ago now. And just like how that video started, we're gonna start with simple disclaimers. I have a couple things that need to be mentioned before I go into pros and cons. And the first one, I've already said this, I'm aware that the season has not started yet. But I did play 2 full seasons of Decay, so I know exactly what the tactic feels like, and of course I have refreshed my memory with some of these off-season wars that we are currently in. So, the second thing is the biggest disclaimer that you can get out of this whole list. I am a war planner. I am fully in charge of everything that happens in my battle group, whether it is from planning on attack, planning on defense, planning rank ups throughout the battle group, and planning the ban system of the entire alliance. So these are things that are constantly in my brain throughout the entire season. I am not just a player who receives their assignments, joins war, and then just takes their fights and then does not think about war for the rest of the war. I'm behind the scenes on almost everything that happens, so there's a lot that goes through my head, once again, when it comes to Alliance War. The next thing I want to talk about disclaiming-wise is I have many of the Decay champs already ranked, so complaining about the pool because I don't have a lot of attackers is usually I don't think that's ever a valid argument, and it's especially not valid in this one, because everyone has these attack tactic champs ranked. Next, I want to say that I love strategy. I love planning in my alliance. I love planning attack, defense, bans, and rank ups. Strategy is probably my favorite thing about Battlegrounds, and when that is added to War, it is part of why War is my favorite game mode, because of the strategy. And then the last thing I'm gonna say is I thoroughly have enjoyed 3 of the last 4 attack and defense tactics. Ironically, the one I liked the least is probably most people's favorite, and that's Clarity. I think once Crush and Ex Magica got fixed, they were literally perfect tactics. I think Secutor was a perfect tactic and my favorite tactic throughout the entire 2 seasons of it. And yeah, I disliked Clarity. That's another type of video. I don't dislike it like I dislike Decay. I genuinely hate Decay. I just didn't like Clarity. And that's definitely a hot take, which another video I might be interested in making is like ranking the war tactics I've played. If you guys are interested in that, I'd love to hear it. I would love to talk about that in another like hot takes kind of video. But with that being said, we can easily just get into the pros and cons right now, which again is basically all this video is going to be about. I'm just going to have some war playing in the background of the Clarity tactic actually. But either way, let's get started with the pros. And the first pro, and one that many people are going to find a pro, but I don't personally find a pro, is that the war tactic is just really easy. Like, you do not have to worry or stress a lot about some of your fights because of what this attack tactic does. It makes a lot of your assignments really easy, and I know a lot of people just want stress-free wars. I get that. So that is definitely a pro for some people. Again, not a pro for me, but something I would be shameful for not mentioning. And this is definitely a positive to people who don't necessarily like war, but play for the Master's competitiveness or the Master's rewards or something like that. I have people who have quit war, or friends who have quit war because they disliked a lot of what was going on in war, and some people who I genuinely think would or have already came back to this Decay tactic. That's not like everyone. I think it definitely is the case for some people, but it's just something I felt like mentioning. The next pro I have is that the attack pool is full of commonly ranked champs. So if you are someone who doesn't want to have to rank for war, you probably won't need to this tactic, because Titania, Silk, those are just like the two that come into my head immediately. Like, everyone has those ranked up. If you own the character, you have them ranked up, right? And that's just 2 of like the 15 different science champs. And of course other classes with skill and cosmic that you probably have these champs ranked up, especially like Serpent. So Serpent being attack, everyone has Serpent ranked up, so that's another really good option for you. And then the last pro that I have, this list is very short because obviously it's me complaining, but the last pro I have is that this season takes place over a holiday break, and I completely understand that that is another reason that people might want a chill tactic, because it is over Christmas season and Thanksgiving and stuff, all the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, all that stuff. You might want to break during that time, and this is definitely going to be that, because the tactic lasts from now to well into the new year, I believe. So yeah, that's definitely a positive for a lot of people. But with that being said, let's get to what this video is really all about and start talking about my cons. And the biggest one, I think at least, is the fact that the attack tactic itself is blatantly overpowered, and it removes a lot of the threat of defenders. The attack tactic, let's just count what it does. Firstly, it makes you immune to placebos. Placebos is I wouldn't say the only threat of the defense tactic, but it kind of is. So if you're just fully immune to placebos, you're just kind of fully immune to the threat just by having the tag. And it also gives you withers when you trigger that immunity, which are going to just make a lot of different nodes so much easier, like Conflictor. That node's going to be almost completely shut off. Another thing the attack tactic does, which was completely unnecessary and should not even be remotely in this tactic in my opinion, is it completely turns off damaging effects. Like, for each debuff on the opponent, they give the attacker a 35% damage reduction, just passive. It's just always there. It's not even relevant to the defense tactic whatsoever. As far as I know, there is literally no form of damage in like red number type mechanics in the defense tactic. It is just there because it can be. I don't understand why, it just is. And it just means that so much is just completely turned off. Like, Hazard Shift, gone. Enchantress's damage reflect, gone. Like, that's one of the biggest ones for me, is Enchantress can't even do damage back because how busted this attack tactic is. And Enchantress is supposed to be the pinnacle of Mystic Defenders right now, and she just immediately turned off. I don't understand it. But then the last thing we need to talk about for the attack tactic is the part where it inflicts a slow, which I think, as far as the defense tactic goes, this is the only threat it has left, is that unstoppable effect for when a buff expires, and then you knock down the defender once and you inflict a slow for 12 seconds. So, it really means nothing. So, in recap, the defense tactic is non-existent because of what the attack tactic does. And the attack tactic invests itself even further into countering a ridiculous amount of things that the defense tactic doesn't even have, such as damage reflect, such as withers, such as slow for effects that aren't the unstoppable from the tactic. It's just blatantly overpowered, and it's gonna tie into what I have to say next. Actually, one more thing I'm gonna say about the tactic before I move on is that usually, lately the attack tactic has at least left some threat on defense for like the defensive tactic to still have something. For Crush, it was still the Daunteds are obviously increasing special damage. Ex Magica, I can't remember enough about that tactic to think of what it was, but Clarity, it left some crit resistance on the defender still, which wasn't much, but it was still there. And then Secutor, I think, was like the pinnacle of an attack tactic removing a lot of the threat but still leaving threat, where it still left the defender with some power gain still happening. I thought that was really good, and part of why I really liked Secutor was because there was still power gain happening. It just wasn't as potent as it normally would be, because that's how a good defense and attack tactic relationship should be, I think. So anyway, with that being said, let's move on to my next point, which is that there are stupid overpowered attackers in the pool. Not only is the attack tactic completely overpowered, the actual tactic pool is arguably even more overpowered, because I'm pulling up the list right here. We have probably the 3 best science characters in the entire game, Silk, Titania, and Hulk, in the tactic. We move down the list to Spider-Ham, who also up in the top 5 list. Luke Cage, who is probably the most underrated science champ in the game. Void, who is good for basically every single war meta we have had since I've been playing. He's somehow been good. Photon, probably top 5 as well. We have characters who are buff immune on their own, so there's like no threat of unstoppable even, like Cassie and Ant-Man, which, okay, actually I'm glad Ant-Man's in the tactic so we can see that guy do something. But still, then we've got champs with base immunities, and you don't even need base immunities to counter the tactic, like Anti-Venom and Red Hulk. Again, champions who are, cool being there, because it means they could get some use out of them, but they won't, because Silk can just place 3 debuffs and then do exactly what you would want Anti-Venom or Red Hulk to actually do. So you're not playing them anyway. And I think, once again, that is why I think Secutor was such a good tactic, because every single champion on that list, I could think of where they could go on the map and where they might actually be the best option for a fight. I think there might have been 5 to 10 Secutor attackers where that might not be the case. I think closer to 5, like Civil Warrior, okay, I'm not making an argument for that guy being the best at anything. But even Arcade, like, I think Domino and Node 43, I genuinely think Arcade's the best option to send to that fight. Like, I genuinely believe that when I'm saying Arcade is the best option in that tactic, with the bans that were consistently set up, that he would be the best option for that matchup. And I can't say the same for Red Hulk anywhere, Anti-Venom anywhere, Ant-Man even anywhere, I don't know. The Spider-Gwen anywhere, Sandman anywhere, Spider-Man Classic anywhere. Like, you get the point. It's just, we've got overpowered attackers in the pool, which Secutor did a good job at avoiding, to where the more niche champs in the pool you don't run anyway. So there's no reason for them to be there to begin with. So I just think the pool is dumb. And it moves on to my next point, where placing a defense feels meaningless. Because let's recap what the Secutor tactic actually counters. It's gonna completely invalidate Path 9, because you just are immune to damaging effects. It's going to completely invalidate nodes like Conflictor, nodes like Buffet, because you have Despair from the extra debuffs, you have ability power control from the Withers themselves. It's going to completely invalidate, basically Node 46 is completely gone, which Node 46 still was a threat even with the ability power rate reduction in Secutor. There's probably still going to be a little bit of threat on 46, but I can't even think of what you would place there. Like, Mangog isn't even defense tactic, and he would actually maybe be a good placement there this meta. So yeah, Path 9 invalidated. Path 8, all the power gain stuff on Path 8 invalidated. As far as like defense, I think Path 3 and Path 5 are going to be the places where the attack tactic is the least useful. Possibly Path 3 it's still useful. I'd have to think about it. Probably Path 3 is still, like, attack tactics good there. I think Path 5 is going to be sometimes a struggle, but that's one path, right? If we look at any of the mini bosses, you're turning off Power Snack Node 39. I guess 38 is probably still a threat. 38 would probably be a good call, but then you run a buff immune, and it's like, there's no threat on defense anymore, is there? Because if you're buff immune, that's the only thing that matters to turn the defense tactic off. So you would send Titania to that node anyway. And of course, Titania could be banned, but you get the idea. Like, a buff immune's still going to be really, really good there. I don't know. So it's just, like, I've never been as discouraged as I have by this tactic when it comes to planning a defense, because I could make trap placements. I could, like, set my defense up for success to where I have a, you know, decent kill ratio coming from my defense, to where I don't have to have my guys doing attack to, like, play perfectly for every fight, because, like, I have some wiggle room with my defensive placements. Like, I know there are some placements that genuinely might get some kills. I think that was more of a case in Crush and Ex Magica than it was in Clarity and Secutor, but it's still something I feel like is worth talking about. And then, you know, from meaningless defensive placements, we can also talk about meaningless ban placements, because, like, we can ban 5 champs, right? Well, the best attacker in the pool, probably Silk, is whitelisted, so that doesn't matter. I have a rank 3 Silk. I'm going to love playing her. Do I think she should be whitelisted? Absolutely not. I'm going to enjoy using her. I just don't think she should be whitelisted like she is. And same thing with Count Nefaria, because that guy is stupid for a war scenario. Maybe a little bit less so if you don't run him with his unfazed counter synergy champion, Iron Man, but you get the idea. It's just like, I can ban 5 champs, and then there's still gonna be 5 more that are almost just as good. So banning doesn't really matter. And it also means that banning around a defense doesn't really matter, because I could maybe make bans to make Hazard Shift a lot more difficult for the opponents. That happened a lot in Secutor, with, like, Ultron bans, Ironheart bans, Omega Sentinel bans, Cassie bans, stuff like that. It doesn't matter, because every single attacker takes Hazard Shift in this attack tactic. So, I can't even, like, put effort into bans anymore, because everything does what I would want my bans to counter. So, yeah, like, the next thing I'm gonna say is that there's, like, no strategy or substance to war anymore, because, like, I can just send Silk to 10 fight wars when I'm planning. And while that might be nice for some planners who are just kind of doing it out of obligation, there's actually a lot of war planning that I like. So I don't want to just send one attacker to everything. I want to, like, be interesting and plan not only myself interesting wars, which I probably could because of how the attack tactic works, but I want to make them sound like the best option to something. Like, again, Arcade for Node 43 Domino. I think some of the fun things for planning is sending that fight, and then it turns out to be the best option. And it just means I can help prove the usefulness of a champion when I can show that they are the best option for something on the map. Like, I know Ironheart was a champion that people thought was really, really bad, and then we saw, wait, she is literally the best option for a meta placement in Node 31 Dust, so maybe she's not that bad after all, right? So, I think that when you can put strategy into planning defense, planning attack, it just means that you can show opportunities for a bunch of other champions to be really cool in what they can do. You know me, I like to find the use in a champion everywhere, and not just like, okay, Count Nefaria is a really good champion at countering America Chavez. Well, like, almost every science champion is good at countering America Chavez. Like, what's something that's really meta relevant that I can make a champion look good at doing. And that's like the example of node 43 Domino. I actually think that's a pretty good defensive placement, and I feel like I also could show that Arcade was really, really good for that and prove that there is something useful in this champion when people think he's garbage. And I can't prove that anyone's the best at anything in this ward scenario because everyone's the best at everything, right? Anyway, that's a lot of reiterating on what I already said. I'm probably just yapping a lot at this point. And the last thing I'm going to say is that my least favorite things about Battlegrounds, I feel like, were transferred into this war tactic, where a lot of like the annoying things with Battlegrounds is when I just find myself using the same attackers, or find my opponents using the exact same attackers. And there's just like no difference in anything. Like in Battlegrounds, like, okay, Silk, Hulkling, Titania, Juggernaut, they're just the best for so many different defender placements. And now that's the kind of the case for War. I feel like that was more of a problem maybe before like the Serpent era, where like, okay, those four are like the best options for Onslaught, and he was maybe the hardest defender when he released. And then champions like Bullseye and Serpent came out, and what those champions did were make it to where the best options aren't going to be the best options anymore, because you're not using any of those four to fight Bullseye or Serpent. At least when I remember what I said, the four champions I mentioned, I don't think you'd use any of them for those two champions. And I really like that. I know a lot of people don't like that, but when you can create defenders with actual nuance, encouraging decks to be a little bit different than they used to be, I think that's a really, really good thing. And that's just not something that I think is going to happen in this war scenario. I think we're just going to be playing the same champions the whole time, and it just reminds me of what BGs was, and I think it's gotten, again, a little bit better about, but it's still somewhat a thing, because now, instead of seeing the same attackers everywhere, you're seeing the same defenders everywhere, so it's a little bit of the same problem. And I think that's all I really have to say. Like, I completely understand if you like Decay, and I don't think that you're in the wrong for liking Decay. I just come at a lot of stuff with a different perspective on the game, especially with, again, my role in planning as an officer and the leader of my battle group. I just think about things differently. A lot of my alliance mates are going to disagree with me on this attack tactic being the worst that has came out. But at the end of the day, it's just my opinion, and it's kind of like a hot take video that I'm actually starting to enjoy making this type of videos, because I know I have very controversial opinions. They're my opinions. They're what I actually believe in, and everything I said here, I truly believe in. It's just, I like talking about things that I think people disagree with, because I think it makes me interesting as a creator and a player. Whether that really matters or not, I don't know. But at the end of the day, I kind of hope, I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you disagree with me, I fully understand, and I don't think that you liking this tactic is unjustified. So, thank you guys for watching this one. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Again, I'm fully expecting a bunch of disagreement. Just please be nice about it. Like, we don't need to be ugly about anything. It's not necessarily to me, but to other people in the comment section. Let's just keep it civil. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.